Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who has seen too many movies, and that's why I'm still acting like this at 40 years old. And I'm here to talk about UFC 317 International Fight Night, or whatever the fuck it's called, the big one, WrestleMania, Topuria versus Oliveira for the recently vacated lightweight championship. What the fuck is going on with these champions? Okay, opening up the card, we have Nico Price versus Jacoby Smith. And I've got bullshit right away with the hands. The hands are going. See, I'm picking this guy, but I'm betting on this guy because he's got this danger factor and more experience and all this shit. And the hands are going. Yeah, it's lopsided. Look, Nico Price is plus 900 to win. His money line is worth it. Nico is way better than that against anybody he's matched up against in the UFC. Even if his decline is obvious and it looks pretty steep, and even if Jacoby Smith looks like he's got all the upside in the world, which he does, Nico Price is better than plus 900 against anybody. That's fucking crazy. And it's not like, oh, those should be wider. No, it's like I have to bet on that. And I have. But I am also going to play sprinkles on his props, probably astronomical odds for him outlasting and finishing Jacoby Smith because Nico Price does have experience and he does have danger. He's got 13 finishes in his 16 wins, just 3 submissions, but we know he's dangerous there. And of course, with his knockouts, he's dangerous from any position. You could have both hooks in on his back, and you're still in danger of getting knocked out from Nico Price. But yeah, he's got one win in the last however many years, and it's against Alex Morono. The one before that's against Cowboy Oliveira, who's out of the UFC. And he's taken a lot of damage along the way, even in fights where he wasn't finished. Although maybe not the Temba Garimbo fight, but that was an obvious case of him having slowed down. So yeah, things aren't trending Nico Price's way. And I don't know if I gave you my prediction. I think I've implied it at the top. But my prediction is Jacoby Smith knocks him out. And I'll take it happening in 38 seconds, just like Robbie Lawler did 2 years ago. And it just has to be my prediction because Jacoby Smith is not going to be an easy guy to mix things up with. He's a wrestler first and foremost, but he is incredibly dangerous. As a fighter, he's a striker. And I think he's going to be too fast, too quick, and too dangerous for Nico Price. And I've got him going through him with a knockout in round 1. But the bet, I'll try to cover that prediction with a bet. Maybe it'll be Jacoby Smith by knockout in round 1. Maybe it'll be Jacoby Smith by knockout, or maybe the under. I don't know, under 2.5 rounds should probably be set at fucking minus 700. But you never know. Sometimes those odds are worth it. But in general, without having seen any odds aside from the money line, my play that I expect here, my primary play, is wasting money on Nico Price. The odds are just too wide where I don't think anything's going to be worth it for Jacoby. Although, again, I have to see. But yeah, Nico Price, could he be the first guy to beat Jacoby Smith, whose record I've pulled up here? I think it would have to be with something sudden. I think he would have to hurt him and finish him with either a knockout or a submission. Maybe Nico could lace up another Darce choke or something. But I do think he's got to hurt him with some concussive shit because he's not going to have a good time outpointing the wrestler. He's not going to be winning the positional battle. Jacoby Smith isn't the most proven 15-minute fighter. He's got these 2 decisions here. This one against Levon Lewis was a solid test. Things weren't going his way in that fight, but he, not throughout the whole fight, but he definitely did enough to win. He won this one against Austin Jones a little more comfortably, but still, those guys are not at the Nico Price level. And I know Nico Price isn't known as the greatest 15-minute hustler himself, even though he did outpoint Alex Morono in his last win. But still, I think Nico Price is a versatile, dangerous, resourceful fighter. And if the wheels haven't completely fallen off, he's got tricks up his sleeve where there's room for him to surprise any fighter who hasn't suffered defeat yet. Jacoby's run through everybody pretty much, aside from those two guys he beat by decision. And he really had a comfortable fight with Austin Jones. But again, the Levon Lewis fight was a little tougher. But he hasn't faced much adversity at all. This guy, Christian Savoy, whatever, on the Contender Series that he beat in round 2. That was another comfortable victory where I thought maybe he was slowing down for a brief moment in round 2. And then he just kind of stepped on the gas and went through the guy in round 2. So, yeah, he's passed every test. He has to be my pick. Jacoby Smith by knockout round 1. But Nico Price, he can knock you out if you got both hooks in. He can knock you out with an up kick or some hammer fist like he did with Randy Brown. Plus 900. Fuck that. Nico Price is my bet. Okay, next up we have Alvin Hines making his UFC debut against Janata Diniz. And before I give you my prediction, I want to say that I listened to myself do the Nico Price versus Jacoby Smith breakdown just there, and that was brutal. Like, how do you listen to me? I was going, all right, shut up. But either way, my prediction here is Janata Diniz wins, and I've got him winning by knockout in round 2. And the basis for the prediction is, even though Alvin Hines hasn't lost yet, and I'll get into his amateur record in a second, he's definitely not the most agile fighter. I don't think he's going to have an easy time making his wrestling the story of this fight. He's pretty fucking strong, though, I'll say. I think he can definitely hold Janata Diniz down. But I think he's going to have a hard time getting it down. And I think on the feet, he is not such an imposing guy, even though he's got some nice finishes and whatever. He's slower, and I think Janata Diniz is really going to have his number. And that's why I've bet on Janata Diniz with only his money line available at minus 250. Not heavily because I want to look for everything once the over-under comes, which should be tomorrow or whatever, and then the props. But I do think he wins this fight. And without having seen Alvin Hines lose, I do think Janata Diniz knocks him out. It's based mostly on Janata Diniz and how he fights. But it's just how I see the fight playing out. This guy, Alvin Hines, does have one loss on Sherdog. This guy, Derek Benoit, or Benoit, maybe, if he's like Ryan Benoit. But I don't know if that's a win or a loss. Tapology has the same fight listed as a victory. So and it's in 1 minute and 43 seconds over there as well. I'm a Sherdog guy myself, but in a situation like this, I'll give the edge to Tapology, to be honest. So I'll just assume it's a victory and Sherdog's got it wrong. But I do think Alvin Hines, without having seen that fight, I still think he's vulnerable on the feet, especially against a guy like Janata Diniz. Diniz lost his last fight against Marcin Tybura, and that's proof that he is vulnerable on the ground. But I do think Marcin Tybura is levels above Alvin Hines on the feet, with wrestling, and on the ground. I just think he's a much better fighter. Alvin Hines, he is 33 years old. For a heavyweight, that might make him like a baby, but he's definitely, there's been younger guys that have debuted. He's not young. And I do think he's as fast as he's going to be, and that's not too fast. Again, he's really strong, and he's got some great traits as a fighter, but I just have doubt in him. He's only got one decision. The rest are all finishes. I was able to see most of these fights, if not all of them. I think most of them. Certainly didn't get to see that amateur loss. But his one fight here against Justin Smith, I thought he could have been TKO'd at moments in that fight. He did end up winning a decision, and it was a grimy fight, and he ended up outlasting Justin Smith, where I thought he was out of gas and up against it, and he ended up forcing the fight to the ground, ended up on mount, and secured the victory and almost the finish himself, which was a great showcase of his traits. But I still think, that wasn't too long ago. That was 14 months ago. I can't do math. That was 14 months ago, and I think he's had a lot of experience since then, but he's still relatively the same fighter. I could be way off on that, but I just think he's going to run into trouble against Jonathan Diniz. He's coming off a nice win 2 months ago over this guy, Billy Ray Valdez. Not the most imposing heavyweight himself, but he got a nice head kick, which is good for a guy, Alvin Hines, who's built like fucking Brad Kohler, if you remember him. But and I believe he was a scumbag. But anyway, Alvin Hines, he got head kicks that landed throughout that whole fight. In each round, he had a nice moment with his head kicks, which says something again for his deceptive dexterity. But I think that is not the type of fight he's looking to fight against Jonathan Diniz anyway. And Jonathan Diniz, there's no doubt in his chin or anything with him on the feet. And I think he's just much better than Alvin Hines. I think he hits harder. I think he wins the single punch battle. And I think he wins the combination battle as well. And I've got him winning by stoppage. I'm going to go with it happening in round 2 or whatever I said in the beginning. I'll just pretend to be consistent like I fucking remember. But in general, I'm going with him winning by knockout. And as for the odds, it's only minus 250 available right now as money line. I like that. Covers the decision as well, but I do think he's going to get the stoppage victory. And again, that's without having seen Alvin Hines' one loss or even knowing if it was a loss to begin with. Next up, we have SD Dumas taking on Jackson McVey. My prediction for this fight is Jackson McVey wins by round 1 submission. And the basis for the prediction is SD Dumas broke into my home last night and robbed me. So I'm going against him. Look, I don't have too much faith in Jackson McVey because I haven't seen him fight at a high level. But he's passed every test with flying colors. He's looked really dangerous, as you see here. Just about every win is within a minute or so. And his amateur record isn't bad either. He's only got one loss, and it's an armbar to Wesley Schultz, who recently fought Mansour Abdul Malik on the Contender Series. So he's hovering around the UFC with a nice record. But yeah, this guy is still largely untested. And of course, I mean his level of competition, but also in MMA fights. You know, he's gone deeper than round 1 a few times in his amateur career. This one was a nice submission victory over DeMarcus Griffin, which I could have sworn was in round 2, but maybe it was in round 3. But I was able to see some of these. It's not like he's likely to gas after round 1, but as a pro, and for the last 2 or 3 years, all he's known are 1-minute fights. Here he's taken a step up in competition. SD Dumas, who may be a refined street fighter and not the greatest martial artist out there, but he's won nothing but decisions at the UFC level and pretty much nothing but finishes before that. So he turned a corner at the UFC level. You could say what you will about his competition and their fucking decision making, like Cody Brundage here, but he won 15-minute fights. So on that alone, it's a tough test for Jackson McVey. But I'm still going with McVey because SD Dumas I still think is vulnerable. And I don't mean just because he kind of collapsed, in my opinion, against Mika Oleksiejczuk, whatever happened there. Oleksiejczuk is ferocious and he went through him. And then the Nursultan Ruzaboyev fight, you can argue he was compromised there from the eye poke or whatever happened there. But Josh Frem still went through him with relative ease, a competitive first round, but then Frem cracked him and took him down and guillotined him. And I still think he's vulnerable, even though he's won fights on the ground. I don't know how great his submission defense is going to be. And I think Jackson McVey is a serious submission test. He's long, matches the frame of SD Dumas, and despite the level of competition, again, he's passed every test with flying colors. Laced up this guillotine choke, which was one of those high elbow guillotines. He's got those long limbs. He can make shit like that happen. He's got a Darce choke in here of the guy Ben Fowler. He locked that thing up so quickly. It was like Chaz Skelly on Maximo Blanco, I believe, even though I think that was like fucking 12 seconds. But yeah, he's definitely a guy with a lot of upside. Of course, there's a lot of downside as well. Big question mark there. So he doesn't get my bet, but he gets my prediction. And when the props drop, maybe I'll burn some money on the early first round finish. But yeah, Jackson McVey by submission is the pick, round 1. We have Terrence McKinney versus Vyacheslav, Slava Claus. My prediction for this fight is Terrence McKinney wins, and I've got him winning by rear naked choke in 2 minutes and 17 seconds. And my bets will be on that, as well as the only other 2 outcomes for this fight. Terrence McKinney winning by knockout in 17 seconds, or Slava Claus winning by knockout in 7 minutes and 17 seconds. And of course, I'll look for the under and all the props and whatever. Everything that covers that shit. But in general, I like Terrence McKinney. And with just the money line staring at me, I do like Terrence McKinney as well. I think Terrence McKinney does win this fight. I think he's not a perfect fighter, of course. He's a guy that's been finished in all 7 of his losses. And he's not the most durable guy, doesn't have the best cardio. But I do think he is still a 1-round monster. And as you can see here, he's got 16 finishes in his 16 victories. 8 by knockout, 8 by submission. There's been 1 down the stretch, just round 3 heel hook over Brandon Todd, or knee bar, I'm sorry. I still have no fucking clue how that happened. But every other fight is pretty much the same. It's a rear naked choke in 2 minutes and 17 seconds, or a knockout in 17 seconds. Don't look at his record. That's exactly what happened for all 16 wins. And I've got him winning by submission here. I do think Terrence has a lot of faith in his power, but I think he's got a lot more doubt in his own chin. And even though Slava Claus may not be Mr. One Punch, he can still one punch you right on the chin and certainly right to the body. But I have to say, my prediction for Slava Claus winning, which is not my prediction, but if Slava Claus was to win, I would take it being a TKO where he beats Terrence to the head and the body and just beats the fight out of him as Terrence gets slightly tired in round 2. Or maybe the end of round 1. What do I know? But it would be a TKO. I'd be very surprised if either guy won a decision. And I think the only way that does happen is if Terrence takes him down for 15 minutes pretty much and doesn't advance on him. But Terrence advances. He's incredibly dangerous, especially early. And he's a rear naked choke monster. And Slava Claus, he's been patching up those holes throughout the years, but he is still, I think, going to be up against it big time on the ground with Terrence McKinney on top of him. Of course, if Terrence doesn't go for a takedown on the feet, he's still more powerful, punch for punch, than Slava Claus, and twice as athletic as anybody. He can close the gap pretty quickly, and if you told me it ends by round 1, knockout or TKO, I would slightly favor Terrence McKinney there. But of course, Slava has a chance of getting him out early and certainly down the stretch. And I will look to play those props. Terrence McKinney was knocked out in 40 seconds against Esteban Ribovic. It can happen in round 1, but generally it happens in round 2. And even if he's been knocked out by concussive blows like he was against Sean Woodson and against Ismail Bonfim, certainly with that flying knee, both of them were flying knees, he's definitely more vulnerable in round 2. He slows down, he gets weaker, his athleticism wears off, and his right chin is sitting there for the taking. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about when I use expressions like that. But anyway, he's definitely a vulnerable guy, and I just don't think he loses a decision to anybody. I think Slava Claus by submission is way more plausible than Terrence losing a decision. I think he collapses down the stretch. Not to shit on him because he's one of my favorite fighters. But he's a true glass cannon, and this time I had a fly near my head there. This time I'm going with him winning. I'm going with the cannon. I'm taking the cannon by round 1 rear naked choke. Terrence McKinney. Next up, we have Viviane Araujo taking on Tracy Cortez. And despite that big introduction for Viviane, I'm going with Tracy. I've got her winning by decision. The basis for the prediction is she's a young athlete in her prime. Not that there's any signs of Araujo slowing down at almost 39 years old. But I still think Tracy is the better hustler. She's got 15 minutes of grind in her, and she is the better wrestler. And I think she's going to be able to do what Karine Silva wasn't able to do in Viviani's last performance, which was exceptional. Viviani, she's going on 39. She'll be 39 soon enough. But yeah, these aren't concussive handed men we're talking about here, where age is such a factor. I think Viviani, she's not too far removed from her prime. And I still think she's going to give Tracy a tough fight. Tough enough where it scared me from betting on Tracy. Again, my big play here is resisting the urge to bet on Viviani Araujo. But I have to go with Tracy. I do think Tracy is going to win. I think she's got wrestling and hustle in her, and she is not bad on the feet. I think she's quicker than Viviani. But Viviani's strong and powerful, more powerful. But still, despite Viviani being able to shut down Karine Silva, I think Tracy's going to be a little too much for her. And if Tracy can't go through her on the ground, I do think Tracy can still pin her against the cage and grind on her and not stop working. Tracy Cortez, she was finished once against Sherry Maraski in her debut, actually, by guillotine. But that's her debut, totally forgivable. Since then, she's had plenty of great victories along the way, including Erin Blanchfield here. And her only other loss comes in her most recent fight, the Rose Namajunas. She took the fight on short notice, gave Rose a good enough battle, I'd say. But in general, Rose was a step ahead of her. But that's Rose Namajunas. It doesn't really hurt the resume of Tracy Cortez. I still think pretty highly of her, just like I think highly of her most recent victims, Jasmine Jasdavicius and even Melissa Gatto, whatever happened to her. But yeah, I think Tracy's going to be a little too much for Viviani Araujo here. Tracy's tough as fuck, and she's one hell of a grinder. I'll look for the decision prop, but it should be nearly identical to her money line. As you can see here, she's got 9 decisions in her 11 victories. And of course, Viviani Araujo was only ever finished once, and it was against Sarah Frota, who was pretty much Vanderlei Silva. And since then, she's made it to the UFC, and at the UFC level, no one's been able to take her out. So unless her chin's fallen off a cliff at age 39, which I doubt, because again, she's just got to stand up to female flyweight power. I think she'll be able to make it to the final bell no matter what, and I think she's going to make it close. So yeah, the pick is Tracy Cortez, and the play probably doesn't exist. But I'll wait to see everything and see if there's something worth betting on. But it's not the money line of Tracy Cortez. Next up, we have Jose Delgado versus Hyder Amil. My prediction for this fight is Hyder Amil wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by round 3 finish. And the basis for the prediction is I really like what he's shown so far at the UFC level, especially that really close win over William Gomis, which was following Gomis beating Joe Anderson Brito in a really close decision. But still, I think Hyder Amil has proven himself to be above average at the UFC level, and I don't know how long that's going to last because he's in his mid-30s. But right now, he seems to be in his prime. He doesn't have too many miles on him, and he's shown he can fight hard for 15 minutes at the UFC level. So I'm taking him to get through the range of Jose Delgado and to eventually march him down to the point where he either gets a finish or takes over the fight. Again, I pick him to get a round 3 finish, but it could be that same type of fight against William Gomis where he's just better down the stretch. But I do think in general, he's got to wear down Jose Delgado, slow down his movement, make that athleticism and cardio all wear off, and Hyder Amil do that marching him down shit, which hasn't failed him yet. Hyder Amil, he's 11-0. He's been the distance a few times. That William Gomis fight was probably the closest he's ever come to defeat, even though he got this fight against Devontae Sewell, which was a split decision. He definitely won that fight, though, but he was walking the guy down and got clipped with a bunch of elbows because he doesn't move his head so well, and he likes to be the Terminator zombie guy. But so far, it hasn't failed him. And in the UFC, The one decision, like I said, is his best win far and away over William Gomis. But his other two victories are still really impressive. He put away Fernie Garcia and did so in round 2, which was nice, even though Fernie moved up in weight, I believe, for that fight. And he steamrolled Young Lee. He threw 1,500 punches in 1 minute and 5 seconds, and he got him out of there. He looked like fucking Vitor Belfort or Phil Baroni or whoever, but he looked awesome there and steamrolled Young Lee, who I believe I picked to win, because he's a cleaner striker or whatever I said there. But here I'm picking Hyder Amil to win. I don't think he is the cleanest striker, and I do think his style eventually will haunt him, but it hasn't haunted him yet, and he's taken a dip in competition here against Jose Delgado. Delgado, I mean, he might be incredible. So I don't know, that might not be a true statement, but he should not be right now at the level of William Gomis, who's a much different type of fighter, a very neutralizing type of fighter, as opposed to all finishes here like Jose Delgado, 5 knockouts, 4 submissions. But of course, part of that is due to the level of competition here. And he's 9-1. His best win is over Connor Matthews, and we didn't get to learn too much about him there. But he got a nice knockout here on the Contender Series, knocked the guy dead with a knee, and then woke him up with some hammer fists or whatever. But yeah, his one defeat was this guy, Chris Makate, who out-wrestled him. The guy Makate is a really good fighter himself, so there's no shame in losing to him. But yeah, that was the story of that loss, and that's not a path to victory for Hyder Amil. I mean, maybe it is, but he's not going to pursue it anyway. And I still think Jose Delgado, as good as he's looked in every other fight, and where I expect this fight to take place mostly on the feet, I still have to pick against him because he hasn't gotten that signature win that tells me he can beat a guy who just beat William Gomis, even if it was by tight decision. Delgado's never been finished. He was hurt by this guy, Alberto Romo. He was dropped early, I believe, and hurt against that guy. But in every other fight, I get Chris Makate may have technically dropped him, but that was mainly a wrestling loss. But yeah, he's looked solid in defeat. There's no major doubt in him at all. His chin, his submission defense, or anything. But I'm picking Hyder Amil based on the level of competition in his victories and also the traits that Hyder Amil has shown. Maybe not technical traits, again, because he doesn't move his head so well and the rest of it, but he's a very formidable zombie. He can keep coming, he brings that pressure. He throws a lot of punches for a zombie as well. And he's got some good pop in his punches and all around great traits. So even though he's 35 years old, I'm going with Hyder Amil here. And as I pull up the odds for Jack Hermansson versus Gregory Rodriguez. Where the fuck are these odds here? He's a slight underdog here. I believe the odds have widened. He's plus 142 right now. It's not like it's my most confident prediction, but he's an underdog, so you bet your ass he's got my bet. Yeah, the pick is Hyder Amil wins. I'm going with a round 3 finish, but that's really just because it sounds exciting. No. Next up, we have Jack Hermansson taking on Gregory Robocop Rodriguez. My prediction here is Gregory Rodriguez. I just fucking said it correctly. I've got him winning by decision. And the basis for the prediction is, first of all, he hits like Mike Tyson. Second of all, his big weakness, which is his chin, I think is relatively safe from Jack here, even though Jack's a good striker, and he does have knockouts in the past. Most of his TKOs, though, are not knockouts. And I think Robocop's chin should be safe here. And thirdly, I think on the ground, even though Jack might have the best, he does have the best submission move and the most likely finisher in this fight, I think, with his guillotine. I think Robocop in general has the jiu-jitsu to shut down Jack. And of course, between the two of them, Jack's been submitted here twice. He was submitted against Cesar Ferreira in his UFC debut, I believe. No, his second UFC fight. And he was also submitted against this guy, Jason Butcher, with a triangle choke, who also tapped out Carl Williams, the heavyweight, with a triangle choke. But yeah, Jack Hermansson, he's pretty tough to submit, pretty tough to get go through on the ground. He does have another loss on the ground against Roman Dolidze. It's a TKO, but Roman Dolidze did put him in some funky MMA surfboard type submission move, calf slicer thing, and pounded him out from the top. And speaking of which, he was legitimately knocked out twice against Thiago Santos and Jared Cannonier, who's also the guy that knocked out Robocop in his last fight. But yeah, Robocop has twice the power of Jack Hermansson. I also think he's physically stronger. And because of the technical advantages I just listed before, I do favor him to win. But I'll never have too much faith in a guy whose chin I do not trust. And it's got almost nothing to do with his most recent loss to Jared, where he was knocked out in round 4. But it's not like he got one shot killed like he did in these other fights. Bruno Ferreira, as well as Jordan Williams and Bruno Lopez, current UFC fighter, got him 10 years ago as well. Yeah, they're spread out over the course of 10 years, but I still think it's a thing. And I think in other matchups, it'll be more of a thing. But I think, again, he keeps his chin safe here. And as for the wrestling department, I don't think either guy wants to be on the bottom of the other, but I think Gregory Robocop Rodriguez, again, is twice as strong as Jack. He's got physicality on him, and I think that'll help him win that battle, that top position battle. So I got to favor Gregory Rodriguez. He's a vulnerable guy, like I said, where I can never put too much faith in him. And I haven't bet on him yet. Let me pull up the fucking odds here. He's pretty much a 2-1 favorite. Yeah, he's a 2-1 favorite, minus 198. Like, why can't they just do minus 200? What the fuck? But yeah, he's a solid favorite because he is the younger guy. Jack, we haven't seen since his great victory over Joe Pyfer. And that was a 5-round fight where he was being beaten with power for the first 2 rounds. And I think Gregory Robocop Rodriguez, I'd be less likely to pick him. And I still haven't bet on him, but I know I wouldn't be betting on him if this was a 5-round fight, because I think there'd just be a lot more upside for Jack Hermansson, especially given that last performance against Pyfer. But this is a tight 3-rounder. And I've got Gregory having a few too many advantages for me to pick against him. So Robocop's the pick. Next up, we have Peyton Talbott versus Felipe Lima. My prediction here is Felipe Lima wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. And the basis for the prediction is not so much the Raoni Barcelos fight for Peyton Talbot there, even though that definitely played a role in my decision making. But in general, I think as good as Peyton Talbot is, and I still think he's way better than he showed against Barcelos, and I do think he's here to stay in the UFC. And I think that's because he's got a lot of excellent traits, with just about every one of his wins being a late finish in rounds 2 or 3, aside from the Giannis Gamori fight where he knocked him out in 5 seconds. But I still think Felipe Lima has a deeper resume than most of the guys Peyton Talbot has fought. Of course, not Barcelos, but the guys he's beaten. And Talbot's beaten some good guys, but I think I'd put Felipe Lima above all of them, far and away. And of course, Felipe Lima is not somebody who's likely to collapse down the stretch. I say that because his UFC debut, which I think was on short notice, up against Muhammadjan Naimov, he stole that fight in round 3. I talked about it a little last week when I broke down Naimov's fight against Bogdan Grad, but Naimov did not gas in that fight, not visibly anyway. He didn't have any sort of mental collapse there. That was just Felipe Lima taking the fight from him in round 3. Lima said, I need to do something here. I could be down 2 rounds. And he got in his face, took him down, turned a corner, and strangled him in a minute or 75 seconds. But that was a great showcase of his traits. And of course, to follow up on that, his next fight against Miles Johns, who is a solid UFC guy, he shut him down pretty comfortably. Mixed things up as well on the ground and on the feet, but I thought he looked really sharp there for 15 minutes. And of course, before that, he's coming off a really sharp 25-minute performance. And yeah, he's been tested along the way. Plenty of hard-earned fights. And I think Felipe Lima, he's got just as much upside as Peyton Talbott, if not more. One guy's 26, that'd be Talbott, and Felipe Lima's 27. They're both youngsters. I think they're both here to stay. But I've got to give the edge to Felipe Lima. I think he's really sharp on the feet, even though Peyton Talbott only gets better and better, and he's got the rangy attacks, and he's got some physical advantages over Lima. But I think Lima is sharper. I think he's faster, and I do think Lima can mix it up very well, again, as he's shown in his UFC career and before that. And I think he may not be Raoni Barcelos, but I think he can duplicate some of the success of Barcelos and hit some well-timed takedowns like he did against Miles Johns or even just forcing it against Naimov. I think he's going to be able to take down Peyton Talbott, and I've got that being the difference. Lima's got one loss, and it's in his MMA debut, his pro debut here, a triangle choke to this guy Ivan Luiz, who I believe is a Brazilian journeyman. But that's his debut. You can dismiss that like it's an amateur fight. Since then, he's been on a 14-fight winning streak. And again, he's proven himself in every way. And 2 fights into the UFC, he continues to do so. So I'm picking him to win. The odds are tight enough. He's a 2-1 favorite now. He was a little tighter yesterday. But now he's over 2-1. I think that's reasonable. But I still don't think it's too enticing. So while I've got a bet on him, just enough to kill a parlay, it's not my favorite bet because I do think Peyton Talbott, with all of his traits, he's a guy who's outlasted plenty of decent fighters. He's definitely in this fight. And I think if he shuts down the athleticism of Felipe Lima and the wrestling down the stretch, he's been a reliable finisher. Cameron Simon in round 2, that's pretty much 20 seconds of the round 2. It's not down the stretch, but he got Nick Aguirre out of there with a rear naked choke after Nick was able to take him down. He outlasted Junior Cortez. Junior Cortez was all over him in round 1. Same with this guy, Christian Rivas. He was all over him on the feet and on the ground, slamming overhand lefts into him. And he outlasted him and took him out in round 3. This guy, Anthony Jimenez, round 2. Peyton Talbott is an accelerator. And if Felipe Lima didn't have more seasoning, and if he didn't prove himself already in these grueling UFC fights, I'd probably be picking against Peyton Talbott and comfortably betting on him as a sizable underdog. I don't even know what sizable means. But yeah, I'm going with Lima, though. Lima is the pick, and Lima is the bet without a lot of confidence as his line continues to grow. And I'm taking him winning by decision. Next up, we have Renato Moicano, Money Moicano, taking on Beneil Dariush. My prediction for this fight is Beneil Dariush wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. But in general, I just favor Beneil Dariush. He is a slight underdog. I bet on him, but I feel like I bet more on him a few months ago when he was plus 150, I think, against Money Moicano here. But still, my pick remains the same. I've got Dariush winning. I think even though Dariush has not looked great as of late, of course, he's been in there with some tough fighters, getting finished by Arman Sarukian and Charles Oliveira, fucking monsters. And even though Renato Moicano is underrated on the feet, he is not the most likely guy to cash in on a fragile chin. He's never knocked anybody out. He's knocked guys down. He's got knockdown power. Knocked down Cub Swanson with a stiff jab, but he's never knocked anybody out. He never even had a TKO victory up until the last year or so, where he put away Jalen Turner with ground and pound from the mount at UFC 300, and then he got a doctor stoppage over Benoit Saint-Denis. And I've got to be honest, I don't know how that fight would have looked if it went all 5 rounds. But I know I looked in round one, and that's how he got the doctor stoppage, even though it was stopped after round two. Moicano smashed his face in round one. He got on top of Saint Denis, who is a lot stronger than him, which is part of the basis for my prediction here with Dariush. So it's not like it's something that can't be overcome. But yeah, he overcame it with Benoit Saint Denis and smashed his face in. And I think on top of anybody, Renato Moicano is a problem. Even Islam Makhachev. Moicano is that good. He's got a monstrous rear naked choke. Just about all of his finish wins are rear naked chokes. And of course, the one way Benoit Saint Denis has been finished was a rear naked choke, even though it might be a face crank or something. Let's see. Oh, no, it's a rear naked choke against Michael Chiesa. I've seen it 1,000 times. You just never know if it's the neck crank, the face crank, or the rear naked choke until you check Sherdog, even though they don't know the difference between a Darce and an Anaconda. Just go ask Kevin Holland about that. But yeah, Beneil Dariush is my pick because I think he's not likely to get knocked out, and I think he's not likely to get worked over on the ground. I think Moicano has one round to really go through him on the ground, but in general, I think Beneil Dariush shuts down wrestling from Renato Moicano. I think he's got the stronger legs, and I think he can do what he did to Gamrot to Moicano. And on the feet, Dariush may look more vulnerable, but I've got him getting the first knockout here. I think he's got more pop in his punches. Drakkar Close, James Vick, Scott Holtzman, whoever else. We've seen him put guys away, even if it's with spinning shit. And Moicano himself, I have not a lot of confidence in his chin. He's been knocked out a few times, mostly at featherweight, and theoretically he should be in better shape at lightweight, but there's still doubt there. Fiziev did knock him out, but he was also knocked out against Jose Aldo and Korean Zombie and whoever else. And I think Dariush has the greatest weapon, the single weapon here, with his missile of the left hand. And he gets the first clean knockout without any doctor stoppages and bullshit. But yeah, I've got Dariush winning. I think he wins by shutting down the wrestling and getting the better of Moicano on the feet. I think Dariush, again, he has power, and I think power can win decisions, even though Moicano is a sharper kickboxer than he'll ever be given credit for. Just go ask Calvin Cater, whom he cleanly outpointed. But yeah, this is Dariush, who doesn't have a lot of momentum. Again, he's coming off 2 knockout losses, and he's only gotten older since the last time this fight was booked. But he is my pick to win. And I actually think they're probably close in age. Dariush just has the gray hairs. 36 years old. Yeah, Beneil Dariush just turned 36. And Renato Moicano, if you'll bear with me for a fucking minute here. He just, oh wow, they're almost identical in age. Moicano's like 2 weeks younger than him. So yeah, I think they're both vulnerable guys who may be in the twilight of their careers are headed that way. And Dariush, I think, has the power to make more of that. So despite the recent knockout losses, I've got Dariush winning. I'll take him winning by decision, but I'd pick him to get the first knockout as well. Beneil Dariush. Next up, we have Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van, who is turning around after 3 weeks, where he beat Bruno Silva by round 3 TKO on June 7th. And now 3 weeks later, he's back in the octagon fighting the number 2 or 3 guy in the world or whatever, Brandon Royval, one of the top guys in the world. This is a big step up for Josh Van, and that's why I am picking against him. And my official prediction, my method of victory, I'll go with submission, even though, to be honest, I can't envision Brandon Royval taking down Joshua Van with ease and going through him conventionally. But Brandon Royval doesn't need to win a conventional grappling battle to submit you. He can submit you from anywhere, pulling guard, doing whatever, guillotines. Brandon Royval is a monster on the ground. And I don't think Joshua Van is going to be able to shut him down like Alexandre Pantoja. But should he not be able to get the fight to the ground, I still like Brandon Royval in this fight. He can knock out Josh Van. Josh Van was knocked out once and submitted once. He was knocked unconscious in his last loss, which I'll get to. But I don't think Royval is the most concussive guy, blow for blow. He would have to land that right knee like he landed on Mateus Nicolau, or spinning back fist like he rocked Kai Kara France with. But Royval is definitely dangerous on the feet, even though he's not powerful. And in the kickboxing bout, look, I'd be inclined to pick Josh Van against most guys in a points battle on the feet. But I do think Brandon Royval is funky and rangy, and he's a very good striker. I mean, we've seen him win 5-round battles against the best fighters in the world, like Brandon Moreno. And I do think Brandon Royval is very much in the points battle against Joshua Van. And it's not like Royval's likely to collapse down the stretch. And of course, he's been preparing for this fighter for Manel Kopp for a long time now, and he's had this date in mind. So he's going to be fresh. And I don't want to say he's in better shape than Van, because Van just fought 3 weeks ago, but he's not in worse shape. But Josh Van is always going to be in excellent shape. He's a guy whose traits I have been all over since he made his UFC debut against Zhalgas Zhumagulov. He won a tight decision by outlasting Zhalgas. He had a tough round 1 and then won rounds 2 and 3. And that's exactly what happened in pretty much every other fight he's had since, aside from maybe his last 2, where he won round 1. But he's lost round 1 and all of his other victories and battled back to win rounds 2 and 3, if not get a finish. He's a true accelerator. And the only guy who accelerates more than him in the division is perhaps Charles Johnson. And Charles Johnson knocked him out in round 3 in one of the rare fights where he was winning Joshua Van. He was up 2 rounds, doing really well against Charles Johnson. And Johnson, who usually wins round 3 on points, needed a finish, stepped on the gas, and came out slinging and ended up knocking Van out. Van is still only 23 years old, so I don't think his chin is gone. I still have a lot of faith in his durability. But yeah, those are his losses. He was knocked out against Charles Johnson, and he was submitted here against this guy, Devon Jackson, in his 3rd fight. So it's kind of forgivable. But that guy, Devon Jackson, was built like fucking Josh Emmett or something, and he was all over Joshua Van, tossing him around and trying to submit him. Van did a good job defending, but eventually succumbed to the guy's physicality when he was pinned and put in a rear naked choke. But I think it's going to be tough to beat Josh Van in any way for most fighters. He's looked incredibly sharp. And again, if Charles Johnson outlasted him and outpointed him like he did to Azat Maksum, I feel like it would be a bigger stain moving forward. But he just got knocked out. He got clipped with one big shot, or a few, but a nice uppercut put him on his ass. And look, if that happens again, that's a much bigger stain. That's a bigger problem moving forward for any fighter, being knocked out. But the traits of Josh Van remain, his cardio still remains king. He wasn't outlasted against Charles Johnson there. He was just knocked out. And here I trust him to be in 3-round shape like he was 3 weeks ago. And he's definitely very much in this fight. But I think his primary path to victory, I have to say his sole path to victory, is winning on points and winning on the feet against Brandon Royval. Royval, he's been finished twice, once by a rear naked choke from Alexandre Pantoja, which is forgivable, and that was in their first fight. And another time he was finished on the ground with an injury against Brandon Moreno, who he beat in a 5-round rematch in their series. But yeah, he was never truly knocked out. I think his chin is solid, and I think he's got 15 minutes of cardio in him as well. We know he's got 25, and I think Joshua Van is going to be up against it here. He can't make any mistakes because on the ground, I think Brandon Royval is twice as good as he is. And on the feet, Royval, he's the guy who's never truly been knocked out. He may not have the power to cash in on Joshua Van having been knocked out, but I still think Royval is overall more dangerous. He's a versatile guy. He's the guy who knocked out Mateus Nicolau, which that's the only way Nicolau loses. But he got knocked out with a knee. Brandon Royval almost knocked out Kai Kara-France, or he had him hurt anyway with a spinning back fist. He brings some funky shit that I think Joshua Van is going to be tasting for the first time. And I think Royval is very much in the points battle on the feet. Probably the first guy to get the knockout on the feet. And far and away, I'd say the first guy to get the submission on the ground or on the feet. Subs can happen on the feet. But yeah, Brandon Royval is the pick. Brandon Royval is the play. He's now a slight underdog, but this is pretty much a toss-up. If you feel strongly one way or the other, you play it. And I got Royval winning. I wouldn't be able to commit to his decision line or any prop or submission, which is my pick, because he's such a versatile fighter. And again, looking at Van's losses, it's tough to plug their records into each other and commit to one thing or another. But Brandon Royval is the pick in the play, and I like his money line here at toss-up odds. And yes, I do feel like Brandon Royval's sole path to victory is decision. Having seen Brandon Royval in victory and defeat, I mean, even his fight with Charles Johnson, which Royval won by decision, Johnson outlasted him. And, like I mentioned earlier, he's a fucking third-round monster. I think Brandon Royval survives any late rally or anything from Joshua Van. Again, I don't think he gets submitted, and he's damn sure tough where I don't think he gets knocked out. So if I was looking to hedge this, I would go with Van winning by decision, and I'll wait to see what position I'm in come fight time if it's worth hedging. Main event of the evening, we have Alexandre Pantoja taking on Kai Kara-France. And this is a rematch from 10 years ago or so, which I'll get to in a minute. But my prediction for this fight has to be Alexandre Pantoja wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by decision. And I'm not too confident in that prediction. All of the bets, all of the lines are pretty much available, aside from fighter props, significant strikes and takedowns and whatever. But with everything available, I can say the thing I like the most out of everything is Kai Kara-France by decision, which is not my pick, so obviously it's not my strongest bet. But it's the only thing where I can say, hey, this is his primary path to victory. I'd say it's his only path to victory, to be honest, despite the danger he's shown in his hands, Kai Kara-France, and deep into his career at the UFC's highest level. He's still a fucking killer. But Pantoja, he is impossibly durable. I'd put him right up there with Cheeto Vera and Marcus Aurelio and Chris Lytle. I don't know. All my references are from 20 years ago. But yeah, Pantoja can take it. He's never been finished. And I'd be really surprised if Kai Kara-France was the first guy to do it, despite him being way above average for a dangerous flyweight. But yeah, Pantoja has to be the pick, though, even though Kai Kara-France has excellent takedown defense. Pantoja's got excellent takedowns. Plus, he beat a guy called Kai in his last fight, Kai Asakura, so there's that. But he also beat a guy called Kai Kara-France by decision 9 years ago, which was on the Ultimate Fighter, the quarterfinals of that championship season. That was a season where Tim Elliott won 4 fights and went on to go fight Mighty Mouse. But Pantoja was actually the first seed in this tournament, and I think Kai Kara-France was 9th. But they had a good fight. Pantoja got the better of him, but it wasn't easy. Pantoja was able to get some control with takedowns, but not a lot. Kai Kara-France generally shut down his wrestling, for the most part anyway. And Pantoja, I thought, was at a speed disadvantage in that fight, but Kai Kara-France was a little too gun-shy. Pantoja's takedown threat kind of shut down the volume of Kai Kara-France. And Pantoja also really, I thought, made a lot of his leg kicks. I thought Pantoja's leg kicks, which he actually had some leg kicks hurting him in the first round, but I thought he took over with his leg kicks and started chopping away at Kai Kara-France and making it easier on him. It was a close fight, even though I believe all 3 rounds, they must have been 2018. I mean, all 3 judges gave the fight 2 rounds to nothing for Pantoja, but still, it was close enough. They gave each other a good battle, and it was really cool watching the episode because you get to see all the shit pre-fight and post-fight. And these guys were on the same team. They were teammates here on this show. And you could see they had each other's respect. They really liked each other. And they said afterwards, hey, man, we'll be friends forever. And all that happy horse shit. And here they are 10 years later almost, and they're fighting for all the marbles. So I bet they didn't see that coming. What'd you think of me wasting your time with this little fairy tale here? Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll get back to the fist fighting. But yeah, Pantoja got the better of him. That was 10 years ago, 9 years ago. So it's not everything. But I still have to favor Pantoja today. I do think Pantoja is up against it on the feet. If Kai lets his fucking hands go, I think Kai Kara-France is the sharper striker. And if Kai fights behind a jab as well, because there were a lot of singular lead right hands for Kai Kara-France in their first fight. But yeah, Kai, I think, is faster and would get the better of him on points on the feet. But Pantoja is not out of that fight anyway. I could totally be wrong about that. And if he mixes in the grappling, Pantoja's got him on the ground. I don't think he's going to go through Kai Kara-France, but certainly if somebody's going through someone on the ground, it's going to be Pantoja getting that submission victory. He's the much more dangerous submission artist, and again, he's never been finished. Kai Kara-France, I should talk about his finish losses. He was TKO'd 3 times, the last of which came against Brandon Moreno in 2022 in their interim championship fight, I think, where Moreno got him with a body kick in round 3. No shame there. Moreno is a fucking monster. And, of course, Moreno beat him by decision here in 2019. But the only other times he was knocked out were in his first 2 losses. This guy, Chad George, who was way too much for him and way too big for him, knocked him out with an uppercut. And this guy, Augustin Delarmino, outlasted Kai. Kai was winning that fight. And then in round 3, the guy just stormed him and clipped him with some big shots. And Kai had to shell up and get finished. But those are 2 forgivable losses because, honestly, he had some shit matchmaking here. The first third half of his career was a bunch of shit matchmaking. Going into these losses you see here, Mark Striegel, Gustavo Faracoli, whatever his name is. But, yeah, he definitely had some tough matchmaking, but he went through the Ultimate Fighter, leveled up 3 or 4 times, and the guy we have in front of us is a championship-level fighter, who I think is a great test for Pantoja in a rematch. He lost this fight to Amir Albazi. That was bullshit. Kai Kara-France won that fight. I mentioned the Brandon Moreno fight. And I didn't mention Brandon Royval, who's the last guy to submit him. Kai was also submitted a few times earlier in his career. Again, over 10 years ago to Mark Striegel. But since then, the only guy to get him out of there was Brandon Royval, who's as dangerous as it gets, as I talked about a few minutes ago, if you're watching this video in order. But yeah, that was a wild fight. And Pantoja, I don't think he's going to go through Kai Kara-France like that. I think if he gets a sub, it's more of a conventional rear naked choke type of thing. But I've got Kai Kara-France keeping himself safe. I've got Kai Kara-France making this a very close battle, but I've got Kai Kara-France losing that battle. I think Pantoja is only a half step behind on the feet, and I think he's 1 step ahead of him, maybe a step and a half on the ground. So Pantoja, with all of his durability, I can trust him to make it to the final belt at the very least, and I've got him outpointing Kai Kara-France. As for the bet, like I said, even though the pick is Pantoja, I wouldn't be able to isolate it to one prop or another because he's that dangerous of a submission artist where I wouldn't be able to trust it. And plus, Kai Kara-France does have losses all over the place in every direction. But the one thing I can trust would be on the B side, so to speak, and that's Kai Kara-France by decision. I consider that his sole path to victory, or anybody's sole path to victory against Pantoja, and that's the spot with the value. So yeah, the pick is Pantoja, and the bet is Kai Kara-France by decision with no conviction whatsoever. And in the main event of the evening, we have Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira for the vacant lightweight title. My prediction for this fight is Charles Oliveira wins, and I'm going to go with him winning by submission in round 2. And the basis for the prediction is fuck you. That's right. Fuck you. I'm sorry. I had to. You did just call me an idiot, didn't you? When I picked Charles. And it's not like I'm an idiot for picking Charles, but I might be an idiot for picking against Ilia Topuria because there's no real good reason to do so. I mean, Ilia Topuria looks like the perfect fighter. I think certainly he's in the realm of knocking Charles out, and I understand that's far and away the most likely outcome if you asked everybody. But I also think Topuria is good enough to submit Charles Oliveira. And maybe I'll waste a few pennies on those props. But I still got Charles winning. Charles, I know, is good enough to submit anybody, any lightweight, any featherweight, and John Jones. They're all in danger if Charles Oliveira laces his arms around your neck, or their necks. But on the feet as well, Charles Oliveira may not be the most concussive striker, but he is a very diverse striker. He's long and rangy as well. And I think he's going to feel free to send shit up the middle at Ilia Topuria and get wild with his kicks and do whatever he wants because Charles Oliveira wants this fight to get to the ground. But I think Charles Oliveira is going to be free there. Not totally free because Ilia Topuria's got the best boxing in the UFC, and there's no telling what his power is going to look like at lightweight. He was already the hardest hitting featherweight out there. And yeah, I'm aware Charles Oliveira has been knocked out 4 times, or 3.5, and I'm aware he's been submitted 4 times. I can go through all of his losses. But the only guy to knock him out in the last however many years is Paul Felder. That's the last guy to get it done. That was 8 years ago, 7.5 years ago, and he got it done on the ground, mauling, stuffing the guard of Charles and mauling him after being in a Darce choke for 7 minutes. But Charles, he's been knocked around a bunch. I'm not going to pretend I didn't see his fights with Islam Makhachev and Gaethje and Poirier and Michael Chandler, both of them for that matter. He's definitely been hurt. He is susceptible and vulnerable and yada, yada, yada. But also, he's kept himself safe. In all these dicey moments, he's kept himself safe. Now, I think Topuria is a fucking monster. I think he's got as great of a shot as Michael Chandler for one-shot killing Charles Oliveira. But I also think technically on the feet, Topuria, with his boxing alone, is a problem. He has really sharp hands, and he's been able to get the better of Max Holloway pretty cleanly. I mean, I thought Max won a round there maybe, but and he's the first guy to knock Max out, which is the real headline there. And of course, who can forget he knocked out Volkanovski as well in his whole career. Ilia Topuria is a monster. The only dicey moment he's had in the UFC was him getting knocked down against Jai Herbert. Jai Herbert, who he knocked out in round 2, caught him with a head kick. And I think Ilia Topuria was hurt there. He may not have been, dancing, doing the fish dance for a few minutes, but he went down, came right back up, and looked pretty hurt. Battled his way back to safety and then eventually knocked Herbert out. He also had a tough fight against Yusuf Zalal, where Zalal outlasted him, I thought, and outworked him down the stretch. Not outworked him to a decision. I thought Topuria definitely won the fight. But yeah, Zalal, very crafty, very durable fighter, and he was able to give Topuria trouble. I don't think Charles Oliveira is as durable as Yusuf Zalal, but I think he's deceptively durable. Again, the majority of his losses are finishes, but I like the way he's handled himself, even almost getting finished in the last half of his career. And of course, Charles Oliveira is always going to be a problem for anybody on the ground. I know he was submitted by Islam and Jim Miller and Anthony Pettis and Ricardo Lamas in the past, but Charles Oliveira is the bigger submission threat here against Topuria. Even though, like I said, Topuria started off his career being a submission monster. It got back to it here and there. It got Bryce Mitchell out of there. But yeah, I think Topuria is underrated on the ground as far as everybody's concerned. I don't know if he's better on the feet or on the ground, to be honest. But I know, as good as he might be on the ground, he's not as good as Charles Oliveira. He might be in the realm of submitting him, but he's definitely in the realm of getting submitted. I've got Charles winning with his danger. I think Charles knows he's got to mind his P's and Q's on the feet with Topuria. I really think he's got to mind his body. Topuria, I think he's a very sophisticated striker. He's got incredible hands, and I think he sees a long, vulnerable body there from Charles Oliveira, and he's going to try to go through it. But Charles, with his weapons on the feet, if he can get those rangy attacks going where he can be dangerous and force this fight into a less technical type of fight and a fight that's more likely to hit the mat, I think Charles Oliveira has the better chance of winning. Again, despite all of his vulnerabilities in the past, this is a guy who's matured a lot since he was fighting Cub Swanson and Donald Cerrone and Max Holloway, whatever happened there, the esophagus punch. So yeah, I'm going with Charles Oliveira. I've got him winning by submission. And the fight I'm envisioning is a club and sub. I do think he's going to have to make work on the feet, make something happen on the feet before he makes it happen on the ground. But Charles Oliveira needs the smallest of windows to make something happen on the ground. And I've got him winning by submission in round 2. As for the bets, pull this shit up here. I've played the under. The under, they have all the props available. So I'll go to the under. Under 2.5 rounds is set at minus 210. I've played that. And I've also played minus 280 under 3.5 rounds much more comfortably. Those are my big bets and the big anchors for the big parlays and all the horse shit. But when we look at the props, man, Charles Oliveira, as dangerous as he is, I love those early props. Him winning by round 1. Well, I'll just look at the knockout and submission here first. Round 1 knockout is plus 2,800. Round 1 submission is plus 1,800. I think, in general, rounds 1, 2, and 3 are where it's at for Charles Oliveira, with each round being less likely than the previous round. But I still think he's incredibly dangerous early, and I would favor submission over knockout because he is Charles Oliveira. But the round 1 flat is plus 1,200. Round 3 flat plus 1,600. Yeah, his odds are way off there. I think Charles Oliveira, especially in that window, that's where he can win this fight, and that's where he's a major problem for anybody, including Topuria. So yeah, Charles Oliveira is the pick. And if I'm wrong, I still think it ends in a finish. I should win back my prop money with those under bets. But yeah, I'm going with Charles. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit, and check out my other videos.